The year is 1817. The boys get together and decide the move this weekend is to use some new false keys they've put together to try to burglarize a highly secured and active UK naval base. It totally shouldn't work, but it totally works, and the government's not too happy about it. They put out a reward of £105 or £11,500 today to anyone who can create a lock that's better than the one they've been using to secure their shit. A year later, one man claims the reward. This man, Jeremiah Chubb, with his Detector lock. Not only is the Detector lock hard to pick on its own, it also includes a piece of killer functionality that lets you know if someone's tried to pick the lock called the Detector. Now, the Detector is a spring-loaded piece of metal, usually near the top of the lock, seen here. And what happens is if someone tries to pick the lock and moves any of the levers to too high of a position, it snaps them in and prevents them from lowering. This makes it so the bolt can't retract back into the lock, and it's unable to be opened unless you produce the original key. Now that we know the history, let's get into the restoration of my lock, which is definitely a Chubb Detector lock and not a Tann Detector lock, and it's definitely not the exact one shown on the LPU belts page for the Tann Detector, because that would be a whole... Okay, so it is a Tann Detector lock, but look, these are very similar to Chubb's locks, and were also used by the UK government at times. Mine even has this symbol on it, which is known as the broad arrow, and it's now used to mark government property, so at least it's got that. I was pretty excited to be getting this lock. It came with the original box, the 3 original Tann keys, the little keychain warning about the detector, and from the outside it didn't look too bad. It was only once I got inside that I realized it was pretty tarnished and I had a lot of work to do. You can see here just how tarnished some of these inner components are, the back of the faceplate, the levers, the bolt. So we're going to need to take all that out before we can get started. First thing I'm going to do is remove the 7 levers. Apparently this lock usually comes with 5, but maybe it's because this one's for the government or something, but mine has 7, so whatever. Next thing I wanted to do was give everything a quick bath in the ultrasonic cleaner. This is going to remove a lot of the dirt and the grime, but not really a lot of the tarnish. We'll get to that in a second. After that, I gave everything a quick rinse and then dried it all off and took a look, and it was still pretty fucked, so there's still a lot of work to do. If you look at the back of the faceplate here, you can see it's still pretty gross, so we're going to have to get that in the ultrasonic cleaner. I'm sure a lot of it's tarnished, but we have to get rid of the grime first. I didn't show this for the other pieces, but this is the rinsing process. Pretty much just put everything through a water bath to get all the detergent and cleaning agents off before I dry the pieces out. Now this is when things started getting real crazy. This is when I started removing the actual tarnish from these pieces with some Brasso, which is a cleaning agent that's really good for cleaning brass obviously, but also other metals. And the basic process here is to just put the Brasso onto the pieces, let it sit there for a while, and then take it off with a cloth. And you pretty much just do that over and over again until the pieces look pretty good to you. You'll notice that a lot of the actual application of the Brasso is out of frame because I flunked out of YouTube school, but nonetheless, enjoy the montage. See the light change suddenly there. That tells you how long I was outside doing this, but the pieces are really coming together, so I'm not too worried about that. Here you can see what they look like after that first pass. Everything's got a lot less tarnish than when I got it, and it's honestly already looking pretty good. But if you're looking at the time that this video has left, you know I'm about to go a lot crazier on this, so buckle up. After letting everything sit for a day, I took a look at the pieces close up and noticed that there were some patches of dried Brasso in some of the creases of everything, some of the threaded pieces, some of the little holes and the lettering, and we can't have that. So my first thought was, we're going to use some Windex and we're going to use some Q-tips and we're going to do it manually, but then I realized that's really stupid because I have an ultrasonic cleaner. After everything was said and done, you can see just how much dried Brasso came off those pieces. Thank God I didn't do that manually. Now the pieces are looking really good, and you can see they have a nice luster to them, and there's no more dried brasso. Or so I thought, until I looked really, really close at these pieces and realized that there's a couple little spots, like in the inside there, and in some of the threads here, that had to be done manually. Unfortunately, the ultrasonic cleaner just wasn't good enough, so I did those manually. After that, I decided that the project was done for the first time, and I started putting the lock back together. I thought this part would be pretty easy, but unfortunately I was completely wrong. Once I put all the levers in, I checked to make sure I put them in the right order and that the key worked, and this was the only thing that went right during this process because the key did work. The problem was putting the faceplate with the little key holder back onto the backplate with the levers in is literally impossible. Every time I did it, I was making some horrible mistake, and that top lever kept popping out, as you could see there. It would just happen over and over, and it got me really upset, and I tried a million different ways to do it, so enjoy this little montage of me failing to do it. Even here where it looks like it worked, but the key just doesn't turn because something's completely wrong. Pop. 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 Eventually, for seemingly no reason, after no real improvements of my technique at all, I put the key in, and at first it appeared to not work, of course, but then after jiggling it around a little bit, it actually did work, and I was pretty excited. So now that the lock was back together, working well, and looking pretty good, is this the end? Is this the end of the project? No, absolutely not. This is not the end of the project, because when I looked at it harder, I had a few questions. What is this? Why do the screws look so bad? And really, have I truly suffered enough? And the answer is no. So we got to work. I took one of my number 4 needle files, I started touching my balls and got the shaft in there, and started gently filing the rust off this main post right in the middle here. Even though this is a very fine file, I still wanted to be very careful and make sure I was only removing rust, which I was happy to see I was. And then to finish this off, I got some 1500 grit sandpaper and I started going to town on it. My initial technique worked pretty good of just going in little circles here, but the real game-changing moment for this was when I found that you could push down really hard on it and go in and turn everything. And for some reason that really left a great finish on it, so I went with that. Next, I went off the original plan, and instead of focusing on the screws, I decided that the back plate needed some work. So I broke out some more sandpaper and I started going off on it, getting some of those scratches out. And this was pretty tough because there's a lot of weird little angles and my big fingers just don't fit under some of those things. And there's a little wire on the detector that kept stabbing me right in my cuticle, and so I literally put a little bit of blood into this project, and that's fine. But ultimately I did get down to it and I got a lot of the scratches out, so it was all worth it in the end. After this it was looking really good, but I decided it needed a mirror finish, so I went to Home Depot and got some 2000 grit sandpaper as well as this metal polishing cream that I'm hoping is going to help me achieve that. I also got some lubricant, but I don't want to talk about that. For the 2000 grit, I decided to go with a wet sanding approach where you soak the piece of sandpaper before you use it. Apparently it's supposed to give it a better finish. After that, I moved on to using the polishing cream, and you can see the very first thing that happened here was I was putting it on the piece and I immediately got it on my exposed hand, and it made me wonder why I was only wearing one glove. But after that, I went through the process of adding it to the piece, waiting for it to turn black, and then removing it with a paper towel. And this really gave it the mirror finish that I was after, and I was very happy with how it was coming out. Of course, I had to go through and add it to the little details and the under pieces that I couldn't reach with the paper towel. And luckily, you don't have to put very much pressure on this stuff for it to do its job, so you can just pretty much apply it and then wipe it off. Now, it had the mirror finish that I was after the whole time, and it looked really good. I decided to leave some of the deeper scars just to, keep it a little bit authentic and keep its character and all that, but other than that, it looks really nice. And now for the screws. The first two were okay, but the second two had some little bits of metal that were sticking up and keeping them from being flat, so I wanted to fix that first. My first idea was to just grind them manually on a file, but that was stupid, and then I tried doing the same thing on sandpaper, and that was also pretty stupid. So then, I got this pin vise, and I decided that if I screwed them into the pin vise, I could kind of hold it like a pencil, and I would have a lot better stability. And this actually worked pretty well, so I went with that. So far so good. Switching over to the 600 grit, doing the same thing. Even better still. Getting pretty close now, so I'm going to switch to the 1500 grit and give it another pass, and then finally finish up with a 2000 grit pass with a little bit of water. Now it's really looking good. We finally got all that excess metal off, and you can see here that it's actually flat now, which is what we were going for, so that's great. Next thing I wanted to do was clean up the slot a little bit with my number 4 knife file. The slot's a little bit deformed on this one, but overall I got it cleaned up pretty good, and you can see here compared to one of the other screws that doesn't have a deformed slot, it's not too far off, so I'm feeling good. Then I repeated this for the next screw, and you can see, bam, looks pretty good already. Next screw, try it out again. Looks pretty good. Can't complain about that. Next, we do this one the same way. And I discovered halfway through doing this one that if you do these straight lines at the very end, you will get the craziest, nicest mirror finish that you'll ever get on screws. So try it out. Now all 4 of the screws were looking really good, and they were looking very shiny, but not shiny enough, so I got my fucking metal polish here, and we started going to town on them, because you know it's gotta be a mirror. This stuff's real easy, you just put it on, you wait, you wipe it off. So here's the little montage of me doing that. And then after that we had some real mirror finishes here. We're really talking factory, or maybe even better than the factory, who's to say. And just like that, we had gotten to our Avengers Endgame. We finally had all the Power Rangers in the same place, and we could put together the Dino Megazord. But you guys know I do not like assembling the Dino Megazord, but unfortunately we really had no choice. I did try some pretty new age stuff this time that I did not capture on camera, thank God, but ultimately I was able to figure out a new technique. If you put the curtain into the front plate, and then the key through the keyhole, you can kind of hold the curtain onto it, and if you rotate the front plate onto the back plate and you get a little bit lucky, it will work. Check this out. Bam! It's together, and it works. First try, no jiggling, no BS. Can you believe it? No idea if that'll work a second time, but you know, that's what I did. Yeah. Now we can do the easiest part of the whole thing, which is putting those beautiful screws back in the housing, and it is done. We finally have our fully restored Tann detector lock, and look how beautiful it is, and look how nice it works. Everything worked out in the end, and it only took 1,000,000 billion hours to do. Wow. Well guys, that's it. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. See ya.